Hello, welcome to Comic Tropes. I'm your host, Chris, and it's time for a Comic Tropes interview. As you saw with the thumbnail and the title, you see that my guest is Geof Darrow, but this is a real privilege for me. I am a big fan of this gentleman, and I'm probably embarrassing him by saying that, but he has collaborated with so many luminaries in our field in a wide variety of formats, not just comics, you know, animation, film. And he has a creator-owned comic that's pretty long running at this point. There's a new edition of it out right now, but we're going to talk about all sorts of stuff about him and his career. Folks, please welcome Geof Darrow. Geof, thank you for your time this evening.
You're welcome.
I like your background, by the way. There's a lot of material there. Is that all comics? Is it like novels too?
Yeah,
what do we have?
A little spin around this place.
Oh, thank you. Oh, so some of it's reference?
Oh yeah, reference, and there's toys, and there's comics. It kind of goes on.
That's beautiful. Oh, even a... So that's interesting too. I didn't expect this, first of all, but we just caught a very brief glimpse of the top of your drawing table. So that makes me curious about something real quick. These days, when you're illustrating, drawing, you know, are you still using traditional methods, or do you do some of it digitally?
The audience doesn't know this, but we had a little bit of a problem making this connection because I'm not very good with technical stuff, but I managed to figure it out. And so, you know, I can't, you know, I can write emails and send bets about it. You know, I'm really proud of myself because I can use WeTransfer now and, to send
Very
large
nice
files. But no, I've worked on that last Matrix movie, Matrix 4. And
yeah.
I was the only guy in there that had a drawing board. Everybody else had like, you know, it was like a Star Trek set. They all had their little 2 or 3
monitors and tablets.
I mean, it was just amazing because they were so good. And I don't know, tell you a story really, because I'd get in very early, and I'd see that they still had their computers on. And I'm thinking, global warming and his waste of energy and da-da-da-da. I went in with it. I turned off, you know, the like a, you know, the energy saving thing, the little plug-in thing. And
sure.
And then someone came in after that, and he's going, here's someone go, oh God damn, the power must have went out. And I was like, and I went, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, you know, I was, because the stuff they do in the day, they let at night the computer like actually puts it together. I don't know what you're
rendering and stuff.
Renders it. And this stuff is really heavy duty rendering. And I'd turned it off. And he goes, I haven't lost it all. And I don't say anything for a while. I'm waiting for him to tell me, oh, it's all good. And once he told me it was all good, I fessed up and I said, I have to tell you something. I just thought you guys were being lazy and you leaving the things turned on, and I turned it off. And he was like, oh my, and he started laughing. He goes, wow. He goes, yeah, no. I go, no, I won't do it again. But
that's pretty good.
Through the whole thing, they'd come up about, you know, yeah, well, if Darrow doesn't turn off our computers, I go, well, you know, after a while, I say, okay, I got the joke, you know, got to come up with something
I like
else.
to think in another world, you know, we're reading headlines, Matrix 4 delayed again, unexplained computer problems behind the scenes. We can't understand, but
I would have fessed up either way. I'd like to think, because it's like, you know, I mean, I didn't do it purposely, but
no, your heart was in the right place.
I turned it off on purpose, but not out of any sort of meanness or.
I mean, the energy that, you know, just a computer, like a personal computer or something uses, not too bad. But it is depressing these days, like seeing these AI images. Like if you read up on how much electricity it uses, they talk about just like a simple prompt these days uses like an entire drinking bottle of water to cool the computers, the servers that are generating this stuff, and it's just a little depressing to think about.
And then the other really big thing will be Bitcoin. You say Bitcoin, whatever carbon reducing measures we make, Bitcoin will erase that.
Offsets it.
So much energy that bit farming.
Yep. It's wild. But I don't know. That's
anyway. Yes, I do. I draw all on paper, and I always think, well, because we don't make that much money drawing comics, and you can sell the originals, and if it's all on, I mean, I've had a few friends that I've talked to about, you're not drawing that cover on paper, because that's like, you're working for Marvel. That's paper gold, man.
It is. That's a great point. Like that secondary market these days of selling original art, it can definitely go for a lot. I mean, there are dealers who specialize in just putting that stuff out. That's a whole job, is just being the middleman there. But since you brought that up, Geof, one thing that I found heartbreaking, I wasn't necessarily going to talk about it, but like you made an incredible John Wick illustration. And that like never really saw the light of day, right?
No.
For like original art.
Somebody bought it from me.
Right.
I still have the pencil. I keep all, because I draw on Strathmore paper, and then because I draw like a caveman. And there's actually, if it's like Braille, you can run your hand and feel the grooves from the pencil into the paper. And so when if I go to ink directly on that, because there's so much graphite, the black comes out kind of a weird gray. And so I put it on a light box. So I have like two, I have the pencil and then I have the ink. But that one,
so almost all of your art there's almost two versions of it, like the finished and the pencil art.
But the John Wick one was, I mean, I asked them so many questions. What can I do and what can't I do?
Right.
And they knew what I did, and I told them da 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 da. And I said, how can I have like people being beheaded? Can I have guts hanging out? Can I have all this stuff? I mean, this sounds like really, but I just want to make sure,
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then they got it, and they thought it was too violent. That's what they told me.
For a John Wick movie, that's a little ironic.
I mean, wondered if it was something else. Like maybe they thought I know Keanu a little. Maybe they didn't like the likeness. Maybe it was something like that. I don't know.
You think that maybe it could have theoretically just been an excuse or something?
It could have been. Yeah. I mean, I've run into that before. I'd rather just somebody say, no, I don't like it. That's that's fine. God knows I'm far from perfect. I do a lot of crappy stuff. And
no, I mean, it is out there to see if you look it up online. It's a beautiful.
I sent it to a couple people, and they.
It's out there.
I didn't actually want them to do it, but they did it.
Oh,
I told them not to, but they did. But yeah, it was supposed to be. They were going to cut it up into 3 posters, so that's why it was. So I did like a long shot, and a medium shot, and then a large shot. So
let me ask a general question. You live as an expatriate in France, and so could you just list your personal address first for the?
Sure.
I was just going to ask.
You could. I couldn't. You wouldn't find it because
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Well, that's
but FedEx people can't find me. I get a call like, "Could you tell me where you're at?" And I would go out and I stand on the road. I go, "You'll see this big goofy guy." I mean, I'm never mistaken for not being American. Although sometimes they think I'm English because I'm close to the coast, and there's a lot of English people that have houses here.
That would make sense.
Homes.
But I am curious, are you just there because you like the country, or are you plugged into like an artistic community there? Like, what's it like living as an expat? It's something I just don't have any experience with,
Well, I've done it. I started when I moved over here the first time in like 1983, at the end of 83.
Wow.
And I lived in Paris from 83 until around 88. And that's when I moved back to Los Angeles. And that's when, Frank Miller and I got together. And then I moved back in 97, I think. Yeah. 97.
Yeah.
That sounds right. And then I moved back to America in 2003, into 2003. And then I moved back here in 2018, just in time almost for the COVID thing. But
right.
I don't know. I'm really a kind of a the French always call me savage because I'm not very sociable. I don't see people very much. It's not that I don't like people. I just don't. I don't know. I'm not a restaurant guy, and I'm not a drinker, and I never have been. I don't know. I mean, my most sociable was when I go to Tokyo. I have friends there, and I'll go out, but that's about it. Get me to my wife. Just like she's very, very understanding. She just lets me go. And, you know, she goes out to dinner and goes to movies, and I sit here and draw or watch some stupid, you know.
Well, then it sounds like, you know, you could live almost anywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's the appeal just in general? What's the appeal?
Well, once my wife is French, and I like the healthcare system, and I have dual citizenship, and you know, I mean, the healthcare system is far from perfect here, but compared to the United States, it's it's utopia. I mean,
it's expensive.
I can tell you the difference in prices is just. I was in a hospital recently, and then I was in this rehab for my leg afterwards, and that was like 3 or 4 weeks in a hospital in America. I think it cost me $180 out of pocket.
That's amazing because
it would have ruined me otherwise. If I was in America, I mean, I had insurance, but I would still like 5 or 6 or 7 grand I'd have to pay.
Well, I'll just give a quick example. Early during COVID, you know, my wife and I were being as careful as we didn't go out at all, but I did have to work, and I did get it before there was a vaccine, and I was in the hospital for over a week, but just over a week.
Wow, really?
On oxygen and stuff. I had insurance. I was working full time. I had insurance, and I got out of there, and I still had a bill after insurance of $12,000.
Wow.
For a week.
Wow.
And that's really hard to recover from. You know, that took me a long time.
And when I talk to people here, and they complain here about stuff. I mean, the French love to complain.
Oh.
And they complain about the health, the government and this, that. And I go, man, you guys don't realize. When I start telling them, I said, first, I'll give you an example. Just my cat had to have an operation on its hip. And it cost me 700 euros. And this isn't just an animal, 700 euros, right? Which is about $800.
Yeah.
And my daughter told me just a few weeks ago, a friend of hers that's weeks, her cat has had the same operation, has to have the same operation. In the States, that same operation, this cat's cost $9,000.
Yeah. Over 10 times.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I tell people that here, they just like, oh, you know,
okay.
To go, and I had to wait 5 minutes to get in to see the doctor. And well, let me tell you a story.
5 minutes, wow.
Yeah,
that sounds tough.
Like they send me like I get you get tested, mandatory tests for cancer. They'll send you this thing at a certain age. And it's just. I have to say the dental care here is a whole other story, though. It's not, because the French aren't big on dentistry, and finding a dentist is not always.
Okay.
But there.
Little things outside of comics I didn't expect to learn today. I'll bring it back to comics because that's our comfort zone, I think.
Want to hear about. I think.
You know, because the current project that we're going to talk about eventually, folks, I'll get there, but it's about like Shaolin Cowboy. You know, you've worked with the same colorist, Dave Stewart, on this and on a lot of comics. And I was just kind of curious, you know, for a collaboration like that, well, how does it work? As in, are you talking to him about specific color palettes for scenes? Or are you saying like this is just the mood? Or are you just sort of trusting his instincts and you've just found somebody that vibes with you? But how does that work?
That's it. because I had another colorist I worked with that I really liked when we started the book, but it just wasn't getting done fast enough, and it was taking him longer to color than it took me to draw it and ink it, which I thought was. And I just, I'm waiting and waiting, and I hate to say, now I got to find somebody else, and I had to try a couple people, and one of which quit on me after doing one issue because it was just too much work. And it was a really, really made me angry, because it wasn't like they called me up and said, "I can't, it's just too much." They left a message on a machine, and, which is not cool. And I ran into him later, and he understood that I wasn't pleased. That's fine. I mean, I understand. But Dave, David done a pinup for me before in a Hellboy, and I liked it. But Mike Mignola brought this up to me when I told him I was going to work with Dave, because I said, at the time I saw it, and I said to Mike, I said, yeah, I liked it, except that there's all these dogs, and he made the dogs all the same color, and they should have been different colors because they're different dogs, and I've told this to Dave as well afterwards. And when I said I was working with Dave, and Mike said, "Yeah, you think he's going to color those dogs different colors now?" Thought, oh my God, he's got a memory like a bear trap. But I talked to Dave, and he's the only guy that actually sat down and said, "What do you like in terms of a palette?" And I said, I really liked ukiyo-e Japanese woodblock prints color. I love that range.
Sure.
And you see that a lot. And there's I think his name is Bilaban. He's a Russian folk artist. Beautiful stuff. And his stuff, it's used that same palette. So I sent Dave a couple books, and he was off and running. And I was always have a lot of trepidation when I see, because I always think I'm not all that. My work, I like, it doesn't look, and I think sometimes I'd see it and kind of go, oh, it looks even worse. It's not the way I imagined it. And Dave, the first thing I was like, wow, that's it. That's exactly what I wanted. And so the only thing he gets from me is I'll go like, well, that thing there, that's that part, that skin, that's a part of his shirt. And that maybe once or twice in a whole book, that would be my only thing. I don't know how he was able to separate, because I do a lot of overlapping stuff, and I'm like, how does he know that part is part of that guy's nose, because it's behind a hand, and there's another hand in front of this, and he put so much work into it. And the other thing I was like, do you think we can make the blood a little darker in that panel, or put a little more blood? Or he should have some blood on his face, like in the last one. This one's the Cruel to Be Kin. At one point he kicks his way out of this monster's stomach, the bad guy's stomach, giant monster, and he comes out kind of clean. I said, he should have some blood on him. And I mean, Dave put a lot of blood on him. I mean, he looked pretty clean when he came out. I was like, wow, like he bathed in blood. It was pretty funny. But that's about the only. But I've never, because I just trust him, and I always think, I don't. Other than that, I don't. I might mention like in that that book was Cruel to Be Kin. I said I thought it'd be nice because the guy is the main bad guy is this white supremacist guy. Make him, when he becomes a monster, he should be kind of something that was under a rock, kind of white, pale. Kind of pale and pinkish and pink in there, just like the belly of a fish,
Yeah.
So, but that was, other than that, he's just amazing, and that's why I wanted to do this book.
I enjoy looking at your books. Like, I'll read it once sort of for the story, and then I go back and appreciate the art, and I almost feel like I'm getting arthritis in my hand, Geof, as I look at the amount of detail that you have. And then I feel like it cramp up even more as I imagine Dave Stewart like blocking out these like areas and stuff like that, tracing these lines to drop color in.
Well, in the flatters that he uses, because he's had a few of them quit, and I've been told that
it sounds intense.
That they've said that people have said, flatters have said, if anybody ever asks you to work with Geof Darrow stuff, say no. But you know, in this particular one, I took like, I take less because my expenses aren't so much over here, and I take less money up front, and I give more money to Dave, who, because he does such a beautiful, and he passes a percentage of that on to the flatters. They get paid more than they generally get paid because I don't know how they. I mean, at one time he sent me by accident. The thing just flatted, and it just terrified me because it's all like oranges and bright fluorescent colors, and it's like, did I draw this?
So that you can easily see what you want to like grab and adjust. But I've seen many flatted books. I know what you're talking about.
I can't look at that stuff. It just I said to Dave, I said, please, Dave, don't ever do that again. It was a mistake. I said, please. He's like, you know, it was, you know, ready to.
For you, that was seeing how the sausage is made.
It was for me. It was just seeing how, you know, this particular emperor has no clothes, kind of a thing. It's just like, oh, it revealed all my inabilities and down.
You've beyond working with Dave, you know, obviously a lot of us are familiar with work that you've done with guys like Frank Miller and Moebius and stuff. I was curious though, you know, a lot of us can still read all of these great comics by Jean Giraud, Moebius, but you know, where he hasn't been with us for a while, I was just curious if there was anything you could just tell us about what his personality was like. You know, I don't want to forget some of this stuff, and I didn't know if there was anything you'd be willing to share with us, just in terms of what he was like as a person.
I never understood what he saw in me. He was always so nice to me. I became a fan of his when I was in high school through Blueberry. That was his main character.
Great Western.
And I remember Bud Plant I'd seen some of these in a book by Maurice Horn called The History of Comic Strips in the World. And it had some panels from, they went to France, they had French, Spanish, Argentinian, Belgian, and Japanese. And they had a couple, you know, panels from this Western. And holy cow. Because, you know, in most American Westerns, they just kind of, they try to avoid having to draw the horses or the backgrounds. And it's always pretty much close-ups. And I understand. But yeah. But I got a catalog from Bud Plant, and he had these French, they're in French, but these Blueberry books, and just on a whim, I sent him, I know they're like $3 or $4, which was a lot of money to me, but and I got three French artists that I liked. One was him that I'd seen in this book, another called Mézières, who did Valerian, which was made into a movie.
Oh, yeah.
This guy, Herman, who did a thing called Bernard Prince, which was sort of a more action-packed version of Corto Maltese. He was like a ship's captain, and they just, you know, they had adventures. Maybe like Travis McGee. And they got these 3 books, and I had never seen anything like those. They could draw anything, those guys. I mean, and Giraud, to this day, there was a panel of this train going over a trestle being attacked by Indians, and it was an upshot. And I'm like, how could anybody draw that? I mean, Val Foster could, but so I became, and I became such a huge fan that I just started buying his stuff, and I managed to track him down. I moved to California after that. I managed to track him down at Disney. He was working on Tron, and through a friend of mine, my girlfriend at the time, one of her close friends, he worked at Disney. He was an architect, an engineer working on one Epcot Center, which was being built in Florida. And I thought, this guy's got juice at Disney, because you couldn't get on the Disney lot. And I knew he was there. Moebius was there. And I said, can you find this guy? See if you can get me on the line. If I could just meet him. Because he was a myth. No one had really seen the guy. And he called me up after a day or so. He said, we're having dinner with him on Saturday. And we became friends. And he was always, you know, he was the guy that I went over to visit him a year or so after that and stayed at his house. And he took me to Metal Hurlant. I mean, I never showed him my work. And when he was in California around that thing, and he said, what do you do? And I go, I draw. He goes, can I see it? And I showed it to him, and he liked it. And I kept in contact. Then I was over there. I said, I'd done a story. He said, well, he was going into Paris when I was going back to Paris because it's way out in the middle of nowhere, really out in the middle of nowhere. And he took me into Metal Hurlant, which is the French, which is the original heavy metal.
Mm-hmm.
And he took me in. They said, "Oh, this is the editor," and he left me with them. And I showed her my story, and they agreed to print it. It was 4 pages, and they later turned it into they cut it up into 14 pages because there was 20 panels on a page. These originals were huge. And a friend of mine,
was that Bourbon Thread or something else?
Yeah, it was Bourbon Thread. Yeah,
which sort of evolved into Shaolin Cowboy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they agreed to, and it was kind of funny because I mailed it to them. I had finished it and I mailed it to them, the originals, and they were on vacation, so they showed up. There was no one to sign for them because they got sent back twice because I didn't know they just left for this one. It was like, Jesus, I remember that was expensive. We were going to hand them a bear there, and they finally got him, and it was finally printed. About that, I stayed in touch with them. And make a long story short, Jean, I was proposed to draw a story that Jean was going to write, and I went over to France to do it. And, but it was part of a sect. He was part of this crazy science fiction-y kind of sect that believed that aliens were going to come down and rescue people that believed, because they felt a nuclear war was coming. This was 1984, 83, 84. And I mean, the war between Reagan and Gorbachev, but who was the guy before him? Big,
it's on the tip of my tongue, but it's been a long time.
Tough guy, yeah. But anyway, and I mean, it was scary. Those are scary. No. Yeah, Brezhnev. I think Brezhnev. Right?
Brezhnev.
Yeah, and so it was just this. The guy that ran the sect had all these things you couldn't draw anything that looked prehistoric because that, for whatever, all these crazy stuff. And the guy turned out to be just another one of those sect guys. It was just set this thing up so he could sleep with all his followers, girlfriends or wives. It was really messed up. And yeah, anyway. And it was in Tahiti. It was all in Tahiti on top of it. I could go on.
Really?
That's a whole nother story. It goes on and on. But anyway, he said, Jean said to me, "We can't do this." Because they would have to approve every drawing. And he said, "I don't want you to feel that kind of restraint." But so he always looked after me, and he always spoke highly of me. And
it's just interesting, yeah. I mean, he seems like we know him as just a creative force, but what a privilege to get to know him as a person.
But he had he had a lot of self-doubt. I mean, he knew really he was good, but he'd go over there I went over there and he was working on this head and he couldn't get it right. He'd cut it out and paste it on and cut it out and paste it on. And I go, wow, even he has bad days. I've seen him just and he'd say to me, "Oh, Jeff," he goes, "What's the matter? I don't feel very good today." His wife goes, "Oh, I saw a young artist today and he's so good. He was so good. I will never be that good. I'm not that good." And I'm like, "Jean," I said, "if I could be you on your worst day, I'd be the happiest man on earth."
That is absolutely fascinating. Maybe that's an essential element of being an artist, is having those moments. But
the good ones.
It's just that I look at his art, and you're right. Like you gave examples of drawing train trestles and Native Americans and horses, and this is stuff that most of us would need a good amount of reference in front of, and there's a few videos out there, and when he draws pretty fast and confident.
Oh, yeah, he can. Yeah.
It seems like there's a confidence there, and so to hear that disconnect of there being self-doubt is just fascinating.
Well, he told me that he spent 40 years learning how to draw so he could forget about it, and he can. But he would have, he would have these days when he would. In fact, the last time I saw him, I went with my daughter. It was about 5 months before he died, and I was living in the States. I went over to see him, and he had this drawing that was in his house. And I was going, "Holy cow!" I said, "That's great." He goes, "Oh, it's horrible." I said, "What do you mean? Oh, it's horrible." "What's wrong with it?" He goes, "Oh, go, no, really, what's wrong? I don't want to talk. The only time he got a little, he goes, I don't want to talk about it. I said, oh,
really?
Great to me. And he goes, okay. And he goes, then he starts pointing these things, and I go, Jean, I don't see it. You know, I said, I wish I could have done a drawing like that. And that's just the way he was. And I remember he's sitting there, and I'm sitting there with him at the table afterwards. And my daughter's with me, and she was like 12 at the time, maybe 12 or 13. I'm not sure, but I told her, we got to. She didn't particularly want to. At first, didn't want to come. I said, you will regret this if you don't, because not many people get to meet this guy and spend. We went over there, and the point of it, he was talking about how his eyesight was bad, and how if he might go blind, and if he went blind, he'd just find a creative way of killing himself. But he's saying it like he's talking about going to the grocery store. He's talking about having, you know, blood in his urine. And my daughter's like, you know, afterwards. But it was, you know, and then he died, you know, 6 or 7 months after. I I talked to him about 5 days before he died. And he was, you know, I was going to send him, I talked to him about this Western TV show that was on, that I thought he would like, and I was going to send it to him, and he was, oh yeah, and then we talked, and then about 5 days later, I was going to go and see him because he sounded, first time he sounded bad, and then I got a call and he died. But and then I'll do everybody story. My last moments with Moebius. That was the last time I was with him. Actually,
it was.
This is no, it wasn't. This is a very odd story. If you want to hear it.
Of course. Anything you're willing to share.
So it was on Saturday that he died, and I get a call from the family. And I said, oh, when's the funeral? And they said, it's on, it was Tuesday or Wednesday, a few days. And can I come? And they said, oh, yes, please. And so I got on a plane on Sunday, got there on Monday, and a day later, and I called up and I said, I'm here. And they said, oh, well, you can see Jean. He'll be laying state at this, you know, this mortuary place. So I go over there. I get in a cab and I go over there. I went to the mortuary, and there'd be a lot of people there, and there'd be people, nobody in there. There's nobody in there. There's like a little waiting room, and I sit down, and, you know, they said, well, yes, can we help you? I said, well, I'm here to see Monsieur Giraud, Jean Giraud. And they said, okay, just a minute. They sit down, and it's funny because I built real quick this cracker because they had like a little guest book where you could sign in things and people write and thank. They're very pleasant with my grandfather, and this was great. And one person wrote, I don't like the reading selection in the waiting room, which really cracked me up. They go, so you're running to see somebody that would really buzz you. Well, I wish they'd had the latest National Geographic and maybe a Figaro and Sports Illustrated. Anyway, so they come and they go, after about 20 minutes, they go, you can come and see Monsieur Giraud now. And they take me into this room, and they brought him out, and it's on a gurney.
Oh.
And they will leave you with Monsieur Giraud. And so I'm sitting down, and I'm with his body, and I'm like, I thought he would, you know, be laying in state in a coffin.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe it was my accent. They thought I was somebody who had come, but because I later found out from his wife, you saw him? I said, yeah, they brought him out for me. And to this day, I don't know. That's not normal, but they brought him, and I sat with him for about an hour. And, you know, it was the last, you know, I didn't want to leave him alone. I felt, you know, but that was such a strange, yeah. So that's my last.
Do you suppose that was his request, or the way that they did things at that particular?
No, I don't think, because even his wife was like, how did she get to see him? I said, I just asked. And maybe they heard this accent, like I said, and they thought, oh, this foreign guy, maybe he's somebody important, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But they had to prepare him to put him out because he's just on this gurney with a white sheet over him.
Huh.
Yeah, so that's my last.
What a surreal experience, honestly. I've just never heard of anything like that.
Yeah, me neither.
I hope you were able to get some closure. That sounds tough.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you know, I went. I mean, then they asked me to talk at the funeral. They had it in this cathedral, and they're like, they had to have it in a theater. He wasn't religious, but he had a friend that was a priest, and he arranged for him to have it in this cathedral because it could hold a lot of people, because like 2,000 or 3,000 people showed up. And the beauty of the thing was that you could saw, because where I sat, You could see on one section was all his friends when he started out, you know, the older guys. And then there was the next generation like, that I was in. And I knew all these guys like Manara and Liberator, if you know who he is, and just a bunch of, and then there were like the other guys. The next generation was like another section. It was very beautiful.
That's incredible. I mean, we can all dream of having sort of an impact like that. And I guess that, you know, what else can you hope for when you're gone is just to like leave some sort of a memory behind.
Yeah.
Or
you know, you've inspired people to do something. And that's what I talked about when I talked. I just talked about how much he had helped people, myself included.
You've had an opportunity to you know, meet a lot of people. Like thinking of generations when you were younger, you know, it's out there that you worked at Hanna-Barbera when, you know, in your earlier artistic career. And that was like this era where some comic book luminaries like Jack Kirby and Alex Toth had started getting themselves some good paying work over there. Did you ever get to encounter them when they were working there, or were you sort of segmented off and doing a different thing?
Alex Toth had been working on them during the '60s. Actually,
yeah, that's true.
He was
that's
the first
true.
guy. And but I was there when Jack was there, and they had Alex Nino, and there was God, Ernie.
He's
Chan,
incredible.
I think Fredo. I mean, just Carmen Infantino was at, well, he was at Marvel, but he was out there, and just a lot of guys. Gil Kane was doing stuff. Just like all those guys, because I mean, you get paid so much. Jack would come in, and they'd pay him, I think, $115 or $200 a design for characters. And he would come in once a week with a stack. His wife would drive him in, and he'd have a stack of these, you know. And then they'd hand him to guys like myself sometimes, and he had to make them animated because everything he drew was, it looked like a Jack Kirby drawing, and you couldn't turn some of that stuff. And I always felt bad because I thought, I mean, that stuff, that Hanna-Barbera, that limited animation never moved much to begin with, and so. To change it from looking like a Kirby drawing to sort of making it look very generic, white British. I mean, when he left to go do stuff at Ruby Spears, another company, and they did Thundar. If you watch Thundar, you can tell that Jack worked on it. There's a lot of Jack. Whereas the stuff that I worked on, you couldn't. I mean, there was one time he brought in these pterodactyls. It was for Scooby-Doo. And the way he drew them, they look like, do you know who Heckle and Jekyll is?
Yes, I do. Yeah, the two talking crows. Yes.
He had like a Xerox of it. And I said, look at this. And I like blacked in the back of their heads, and I sort of got it like just like Heckle and Jekyll. But you know, they're really funny. I mean, he did a lot of spaceships and monsters and bad guys. But they didn't put him as good a use as Ruby Spears just kind of turned him loose on Thundar, because Alex Toth did the original models for all that stuff, the main characters. Yeah. But all that other stuff, that was all Jack, and you could see it. But yeah, he would come in, and you know, you'd talk to him, and he sat at my desk one time because he needed to fix something.
That's really cool.
He invited me to his house. I went to his house. He was such a sweetheart. Just a sweetheart.
Really?
Yeah, really good guy. I really liked him. But there's kind of, who else was there? Jesse Santos. I don't know if you know what Jesse Santos is.
I have to admit, did a lot one I don't.
He did one called Dagar the Invincible. He's really good. All these Filipino artists, all the guys that were working at Marvel and DC, because you get paid more. They had a really good salary. And those guys, a lot of those guys were on. Jack just did freelance stuff because I don't think he wanted to sit in an office, and I don't blame him. But the other guys, they would be in the office, and you'd see, especially over at Marvel. You went over to Marvel Studios, you'd see those guys.
Wow.
And Doug Wildey would come in. Doug Wildey did a lot of what they call presentation work, because once a year in animation, they would do a presentation like, we want to do, this kind of a science fiction show or this crazy comedy. And in the 80s, they tried to sell some Marvel stuff. Hanna-Barbera did. And gosh, it was, Doug Wildey. And I remember seeing one that was Iron Man. And man, it was beautiful stuff. He made Tony Stark look like Errol Flynn. And it was cool. Really, I mean, it'd be impossible to animate. I mean, the closest they came was, and that was Doug Wildey, was Johnny Quest. They couldn't do that anymore.
I love hearing your stories, but and everything you say like makes me think of something else. Around 2015, you were doing an interview with Comic Book Resources about a potential Iron Man project that you had pitched to Marvel in the early 90s, I guess,
Oh, yeah.
that they weren't interested in. I can't imagine the same happening now, but like, what would the story have been? Do you remember anything about it?
I don't know. I mean, basically what it was they said, what would you, because I think I was talking to, I think it was Tom DeFalco. I think it was the editor. And I said, I really like Iron Man. He goes, well, come on over, you do Iron Man for us. And I said, yeah, but I want to do him in that yellow suit. And he went, and that was it.
Really?
Yeah. Because I like that yellow costume, because I just like the whole idea of that clunky thing that which, you know, then I turned around into this thing with Frank called the Big Guy, which is. I was
going to say, like, yeah, that's sort of what that became.
Well, I told Frank that story. Frank said, well, we'll just do our own version. And awesome. So, because I mean, I like the idea that even the Big Guy looks like a refrigerator. The Giraud looks like an old 50s refrigerator, all that kind of neat Art Deco stuff, which is actually a nightmare to draw.
Oh, huh.
Because I did something. I'll show you something. You want to see something?
Of course we do. I do.
I'm going to the New York Comic Convention.
I hope that I get a chance to say hello, because I'll be there on Saturday.
I'll be there, and
all right.
My daughter works at does character design at Futurama, and not only does she do that, but she sold a comic series to Dark Horse called, maybe I can't see what the name of it is, but anyway, I'm going to say anyway, Tramps of the Apocalypse, anyway, and maybe anyway, so. And she's drawn this comic in the evening, and she did like a comic in a month, and she's still working. I'm like, oh my God. I said, it takes me forever. And I'd finished drawing this next Shaolin Cowboy comic, and I'm just scared to ink it. And I thought, oh, because I'm just terrified, because it's just so much work. And I thought, maybe I could draw like a quick comic book to sell at San Diego. I wonder if I could, at New York, I wonder if I could do a comic in a month, because this was like late August.
Okay.
And I started drawing it, and I did I penciled 24 pages in 20 days. I drew them smaller, and it's all in pencil.
Yeah.
And I did it, and I printed them up, and I'm going to sell them, a limited number of them. I'm going to sell them at San Diego, and here it is.
Oh, look at that. That's amazing,
Jeff. Shaolin Cowboy versus the Big Guy. So I bring that up because I had to draw that goddamn Big Guy again. All that crazy shit on his chest. And oops, I don't know if I'm supposed to use that language.
It's fine.
But you know, it's I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, it's focusing. Oh
anyway,
my gosh. And you were doing, so you basically did about more than a page a day.
Yeah.
That's really impressive. Congratulations.
I don't know if it looks like well, I did it. So I made it happen in the desert, which helps out a lot. I don't have to draw cars. I didn't have to draw. I didn't get sidetracked into drawing animals having sex or pooping in the corner, which I often do.
There's a recurring theme to Geof Darrow stories, that there's a poop or a fart joke in a lot of them. And I'm curious, are fart jokes funnier the more buildup there is to it? Like, the more work there is, if it ends in a simple like fart joke, is that funnier?
What?
It's a philosophical question.
Well, I actually don't know that if I done a fart one. I know I do a lot of dogs pooping.
You do a lot of dogs pooping. Well, I'll say this. Here's what I'm talking about. I'm not just making it up.
I don't remember a lot of what
Shaolin Cowboy, like one pager where he just does a little toot at the end, and there's
really? No, I've never had him fart. No,
really?
I don't think so. No, I've had the mule. The mule, used his fecal matter to fight off a zombie.
Maybe it was a burp. You know what?
Oh, a bird. Yeah. I mean, oh man, I always had birds pooping. And yeah, of course.
It was a bird. That's what I'm confusing. But I will say, this new version of Shaolin Cowboy you have called Silent but Deadly.
Well, yes, yes. Because I was trying to think of, you know, it was just coming out, and I was trying to think of, you know, there's the gallery edition, and I mean, they did a book of mine called I named it Lead Poisoning.
Yes.
And then I just wanted to leave it at that, and they go, oh, it has to say the art of it. No, I don't know that this is art. That's pretentious. Well, it won't sell if you don't say da da da. And I go, okay. So I thought I had to come up with something that, you know. And I thought, well,
that was your concession.
I thought that was funny. Silent but deadly.
It is.
I mean, you know. And then I found out later that it's also something people say when people have methane problems. I had no idea. It's just
what? You didn't?
No, I'm joking.
Okay. See, I'm gullible. I'm hanging on your every word, Geof, and I'm just going.
Yeah. Well, if you listen to me, you will hang. But you take any of my advice. But yeah, so that's what I.
You know, we should talk about it because yes, you've got this revised or updated. I don't know how to call it, but you know, a new version of Shaolin Cowboy, huge omnibus, and you've decided to do it as a silent version, like remove all the dialogue. When did you realize that that was a possibility, or what inspired you to go, oh, like it might be interesting to, you know, look at the story in this way?
Well, the main reason I wanted to do it was because, I mean, there's not that there's that much, and this one has a fair amount of dialogue in it, but
it does.
The color art that Dave did, I just wanted people to see it all, and it covers up a lot of stuff, and that's my main thing. And when I draw these things, I don't write a script. I mean, I do little layouts, thumbnails, and I just know, well, this guy will have somebody say something here. He has to talk about this. I mean, I know the gist of it, but I don't do so. I think, you know, except for knowing why people's people's intentions, I think you can look at it without. There's not much that I don't think you won't understand without the dialogue. I could be wrong, but I mean, no, you might wonder at some point why all those at that one point when the lizards are talking, you might wonder what. But other than that, I think it's pretty.
I agree. You know, the storytelling is very clear. I think, you know, it's very easy to look at the surface level and say, wow, Geof Darrow draws really detailed work, you know, and he does really creative monsters and stuff. But the storytelling really is clear, panel to panel, page to page. And you've done really innovative things too with, like, you know, like there's that one Shaolin Cowboy story where I don't remember off the top of my head how many pages. You've got like a panoramic.
Oh yeah, like all it fights zombies for. I had a guy come into. It was at Thought Bubble in England.
Incredible.
He comes up to me and he says to me, "Why did you do that book?" He said, "It has no narrative." And I said, well, I said, at least in my mind, the narrative is the action, and there's a point to it, I think, at the end. And he goes, "No, there isn't." I said, "Well, I disagree." He goes, "No, there isn't," and he kept going on and insisting. And then I started getting annoyed, and I said to him, "Look," I said, "you've made your point. Now walk away, because you don't want me to stand up."
Because that'll take a while.
Yeah, and he very good. And
you're a tall guy.
As he's going away, he says, "No narrative, no narrative, no narrative." And I go, "Jeepers cripes!" I mean, you know, you could
at a certain point, you're like, "What are you hoping to accomplish there?"
And I go, "What do you want me to do?" He say, "Yeah." I said to him, "What do you want me to do? You want me to stop drawing?" He goes, "I think basically just he wanted me to work with a writer or something." I mean, I've had people send me scripts, and I said, "I'm just rather interested." Well, you need a writer. You know, because your stories are really not very good. You know, well, thanks. You're making points with me there. So.
Boy, Yeah, I don't agree. I mean, you've obviously had you know, interesting collaborations with people that have written, but I really love Shaolin Cowboy because there is a narrative. There absolutely is
Oh,
stuff
it's a very
to accomplish, and sometimes there, you know, I liken sometimes things with big elaborate fight scenes to the equivalent of, say, like a musical. You know, a musical is also not really like sensible in a sense, but it's just like there's just so much emotion and the character wants to accomplish something so badly, and this is the only way they can sort of express themselves and get that out there. And sometimes that's through action.
Yeah.
I love it, but that's
Well,
me.
you know, Walter Hill, director,
Oh,
said that
sure.
he said, you know, you know people's character by their actions, and it's something that
Yes.
Andrew Wax, the writer, always said, behavior is truth. I mean, people's behavior shows you who they are. And you know, the Shaolin Cowboy, at least in my mind, he tries to do the right thing. I mean, in this latest one, maybe if he hadn't, because the lizard, well, the Komodo dragons, they don't come to a, and if he had kind of stayed away, they'd still be, I mean, violence follows him everywhere, and violence
Yeah,
isn't all, it's not the solution. And I mean, I think it kind of shows that, and it's kind of
I agree. I think you just sometimes have to look a little closer when it seemed I would call it deceptively simple at first. It seems like fight scenes, but there is something to be said about that. What has actually been accomplished? Why does the character decide to take the actions that he does? And there's plenty of soft-spoken characters throughout all sorts of storytelling. You know, we could look at like a I don't know, Clint Eastwood in something
yeah.
like Good, Bad, and the Ugly. And he's a pretty soft spoken character. And you get to understand him mostly through the actions that he
Yeah.
takes. So I think it's totally valid.
And when I was a kid, I saw Yojimbo. And
Oh, sure.
when, you know, Fistful of Dollars is Yojimbo. And they both
Yes.
have the same point. As he comes into
Great.
that town, and you don't really know why he does what he did, but it's the right thing to do. And even the Clint Eastwood version, Fistful of Dollars, he said, well, why did you help him out? He goes, well, I knew someone that needed help once, and there was no one there to help him. He basically probably talking about himself. And
Yeah.
Toshiro Mifune and Yojimbo, I think Yojimbo is probably one of the greatest action adventures comedies that has ever been done. I mean,
It's great.
it's funny. It's incredibly filmed. The action is incredibly shot. And it's just so original. And it has the greatest opening for me in terms of when he comes into town and that dog runs out of the alley with a human hand in its mouth. And it's
Just
like,
stunning.
you just know this is
Yeah.
a bad place. Horrible stuff has happened in this town. And he's going to clean it up. I mean, if you look at my comics, there's always at some point a dog with a hand in its mouth. And that's what that's from. That's my tribute to, I put that in almost every, maybe, yeah, almost every single one. There's a dog.
Wow. A grisly detail, but like it just says so much in so little. Well, Kurosawa was a master of storytelling.
Yeah.
When you're creating a fight scene within the larger narrative, I think that's an example of when I'm talking about you have really clear storytelling. Like I can always tell where the characters are spatially in relation to one another, and the action flows from like one moment to the next. I can, my imagination fills in these gaps very easily, and it feels very fluid. But to create an elaborate fight scene like that, jumping, kicking, flying, you know, punching lots of characters sometimes. What are some of your inspirations for that? Like, how is it all just stuff that you're coming up with in the moment?
Yeah.
Or do you look to anything ahead of time to map that out? I'm just curious how you map something like that.
I think it's just from watching a lot of movies, like samurai films and westerns.
I can understand
especially Leone and that, and also looking at Japanese comics. I mean, I started buying them in the late 70s. I was working in advertising. I went to New York, and I would go and look in the yellow pages for foreign bookstores, and they had a Japanese bookstore and French bookstore. And I'd go there and see if they had comics, and they had some. And I picked up in New York this one comic, I mean, you know, I couldn't read it, but they're all just bindings out. I just pull things out and look at them, and I stumble across one that just happened to be drawn by Kojima, who went on to do, this was before he did Lone Wolf and Cub, and I bought that thing. And I'd look at that all the time.
Sure.
Because those things are like movies on paper. And
I thought I had
one. You can learn so much from looking at those things. I mean, in terms of doing fights and stuff, because they just really, you know,
it's interesting.
You know,
there are cultural differences as you look at comics, and of course we all influence each other, like artists like yourself are looking for other inspirations, but it is interesting in general. A lot of the manga is willing to slow things down and show you a bunch of action, whereas American comics might have a splash page, but they want to jam in a bunch of dialogue into the story too. So it's I happen to really enjoy how a story in manga, that they're willing to sometimes slow things down and give you a lot of information for a fight scene. A few inset panels for reaction shots, but lots of detail. It's interesting.
So I was wondering, because, you know, they'll have like manga, they'll have a scene where it'll be like you'll see a deer, it'll come into it'll walk, and it'll come in, it'll stop at the river, and it'll drink something, then it'll look up, and then it'll get like a shuriken in the head or something like that. But they take the time to show it doing that. In American comics, you know, you cut to the chase pretty quick, and I understand it. It's not a complaint, or I'm not saying it's better, but it's really interesting. And I sometimes wonder if some of those panels, it eats up time too, and they got to get these things out pretty fast.
I think that there's something to that, honestly, Jeff. I think that, like, the fact that generally an American comic, we're trying to do about 20 some pages a month, and then the manga is on a weekly grind, and they might be doing 8 or more pages in a week. And then, like, sometimes, especially if you can get like assistance, it might be a little easier to sort of decompress some of those fight scenes.
And having an assistant, I mean, we'll go back. I'm going back to Giraud, but he tried having an assistant once, and he said, I just kept doing things over. And I can't imagine trying to be an assistant for him anyway, because he just like. And I talked to one of the guys that he tried out as an assistant. He goes, "Yeah, he had me draw this wagon near a rock, and I did it." He goes, "Yeah, that's good." And then he went in. And the next day, I saw he had totally redrawn it. Not every. Well, there are even a few, like, you know, manga artists that don't generally have a lot of assistants. But I think it's, again, like, just sort of the culture of the comics creating environment, and the fact that they tend to do things weekly, we do things monthly. Yeah. And if you go into like European comics, it's a total mix, you know, because they'll have periodicals, but they also sometimes will just take the time and put out a full volume of a story, you know, like a lot of those periodicals are gone, but that's what they used to do. And I mean, if you did, generally it was like a book a year. I mean, Giraud was seen as someone who was fairly prolific. He was kind of a Jack Kirby in that sense, but he'd do 2, maybe 3 books in a year, which was a lot for here. Yeah. Because I mean, when I was doing Hardboiled, we would complain, "Oh, you're late on the 3rd issue." I go, "I'm on a European work schedule. I don't give a shit. I get this thing done." I said that to Frank. And, you know, the cover of the 3rd Hardboiled is a cover of, the cover is like a head that has a hole in it. The face is blown out. And then on the back cover, you see that, and you see through the hole in the head, you see Nixon standing there with a gun. And on the back cover, it's like you see it from the other side, and he's actually shot through the guy's face to hit somebody behind that guy. So cool. And Frank put a word on it and said, "Sorry, I'm late." And I swear to God, I didn't know that was a joke at my expense for the longest time. It occurred to me. I was in a grocery store, and I know I was thinking, I go, "Hey, wait a minute. He's talking about me." I'll be honest. You know what? That meta joke, I didn't even think of until you just explained that too. So like, I wasn't thinking of that. Because I thought, you know, I never consider myself as being late. And I know after that, I was going to do something. They wanted me to do a comic a Batman thing, and but they told me it'd have to be done by a certain time, and I said because they really wanted to see what I would do beforehand because they were afraid that I would, you know, have a dog pooping in the background or something. And I said, you know, I don't think I could do it in that amount of time, at least not the way I think I should do it. And they got someone else to do it. Made a lot of money, but
you know,
I'm just not that guy.
It's more important, in my opinion, though, to be honest and upfront, and to do something that you're passionate about, and to deliver the best version that you can. And maybe that's not always the financially smartest thing. I don't know what to say to that.
Well, that's even in movies. I mean, when they call me up to work on The Matrix, they talked to me about it, and I said to them, "Well, can you send me the script?" And I found out from the Wachowskis later that they thought that, who the hell does this guy think he is?
Oh, really?
And the only reason I asked to read the script was because I wanted to make sure I could do it. Because I didn't want to take a job and do a lousy job and get paid money. It's hard enough doing that work without thinking that I know I couldn't do it. Like if they'd asked me to work on Barbie, or I couldn't do that. But I know so many guys will take those jobs, and it's just a job to them. And I understand, but I can't. I'm afraid that I don't want to disappoint people. I don't want people to like think that I'm, you know, always taking our money and probably going and laughing about it. And blah, blah, blah. I just can't. So I'll turn down stuff I can't. Like somebody's asked me to do covers, and I was asked to work on that Catwoman movie.
Oh,
and,
really?
And I said, and I told the director, I said, I'm not the guy for that. I'm not like a girl artist. And I got them. The person I got, I said, but I know someone here in France that can do it. And that was a woman named Claire Wendling, an amazing artist. And she worked on it. And she was a perfect person because she can draw the female form, you know. I mean, Dave Stevens was really good too, but he's just not fast enough. But Claire did you know, I don't know if she had fun doing it, but
that's beautiful.
I wasn't right for it. And it's not worth it to do a bad job.
Well, and I'll just say, as somebody that I'll consider myself a fan and an admirer of your work, one aspect I appreciate is there's such consistency, Geof, and just please take the compliment as it's intended. Like I can always count on a level of quality and a level of enjoyment when I read your work. And,
well, maybe after you get this. It's Shaolin Cowboy versus big guy. You'll change your opinion. But,
no. I'm always excited to see anything from you. So I'll definitely be picking up Shaolin Cowboy, Silent but Deadly, you know. So I'm very happy to have an excuse to talk to you. But I would put that out to my viewers that just want you guys to know that's in bookstores, that's in comic book stores. You know, support your local comic shop. But if you don't have one near you, it's in bookstores.
And if you keep it near you, like your bedstand, the thing is so big and heavy. You know, somebody breaks in, whack them with this thing. They're going to go down. Literally,
you think
very heavy.
Here you go. It's good for two things: reading, but also self-defense. Just so you know, you've made that an endorsement, and that therefore, if somebody is not able to sufficiently defend themselves, you have made yourself legally liable.
Yes.
Yeah. You've endorsed it as a self-defense product. I'm just having fun. Is there anything else aside from right now, you know, Silent but Deadly, we should keep our eye open for you right now, Geof?
Well,
just want you to plug anything you want.
I finally started inking the next one. It's
fantastic.
100. I drew it all. I always say I'm going to draw like 20 pages and then ink them, but I get a rhythm going and I get a little confidence. Like, oh, this isn't turning out so bad. And also, like when I started, I was like, oh, this is no good. I should do something else. And until I get further enough into it where I've invested enough time, I go, I can't go back. I got to finish this because it'd take me too long to start something else. So I got, you know, about 25, 30 pages into it. And well, I guess I better finish it. And so I kept drawing it. Like I had this Cruel to Be Kin, Silent. It was 205 pages, and I had to ink them all. I drew it all out first, and that was really hard because it's like, when I get under 200, I'll feel better. And I got under 200. I go, when I get to 100, it was always just like, Jesus Christ. It took me a long time to ink it.
Does it give you any pleasure sometimes to just be able to look though and see that you've got a library of work? Does that give you like pleasure to like see the finished stuff, or are you more interested in what's coming next?
No, it does. I just wish I did more, because I'm at my age. I go, God, I wasted so much time. I haven't done enough. And you know, well, you worked on those movies, you did this. I think, yeah, but because I spent so much time, and I used to talk to Moebius about this. Half the time I spend just looking at the paper, beating myself up, thinking, you know, oh, what do I can't do this or I can't do that. You know, I never had that deadline thing that I think is useful, because that you have to get it done. And I've never had that. I mean, when I worked on Hardboiled, I drove Frank crazy because, you know, it took a long time, and I didn't show him anything for a long. I think I was 10 pages into it before I showed him anything, because I was afraid. I was afraid he'd go, well, maybe this isn't going to work out. And
I love this stuff that you guys created together, and it's just funny to think like how different Hardboiled and Rusty and Big Guy are. They're just like, yes, of course, there's big action scenes and stuff, but you guys created two very, very different stories there.
It was funny because while I was doing that, he was doing Sin City, and I'd go over there and he'd show me Sin City. And you know, I remember moving back to France, and I just, you know, at one point I'm talking to him on the phone from Paris, and he said, Geof, can you send me a couple pictures of yourself? He said, what? He goes, I'm going to put you in Sin City. So really? He goes, yeah, okay. So if you look at it, in the very first Sin City, I mean, of course, I'm much younger then, I'm Kevin. That is me.
Kevin is based on you? I've never heard. I didn't know that. Boy.
I had hair at that point. And it's funny because, I mean, I know like Jim Rugg and the late Ed Piscor always thought I was supposed to be Mike Mignola. And I said, no, that's me. And
that is really cool to know.
And it was so funny because I didn't know what he was doing when I saw it. Oh my God, Frank, you cut my arms off. Oh, geez, that's funny. And my father thought it was hilarious. My father bought the toy. They made a Marv toy. But Marv is standing in one of his hands, he's got my head. my dad had that in his study, and it was like he thought that was hilarious. Like, oh man, Frank, oh geez, I got. And he thought it was funny that, you know, he gave me that Charlie Brown sweater. And,
yeah.
And when you know, when they're doing the Sin City movie, Frank talked to me about playing myself in the film.
Oh my goodness.
And I said, yeah, that might be kind of fun. And but when they hired Mickey Rourke, and I'm a little over 6'6", and Marv was supposed to be big, you know, and you would dwarf Mickey Rourke. So then it didn't make sense. They got Elijah
Wood, yeah.
Elijah Wood and I met Elijah Wood, and I told him, I said, hey, you played me in Sin City. He probably thought he was cool. He goes, yeah, that's me. I'm Kevin.
That's kind of I never knew about that. I feel so ignorant. I've never heard about that before.
Not many, you know, but God damn it. And well, I met when I was living in Los Angeles, and I was out on the street I had a dog, it was a bulldog, and this car goes by, and the guy looked familiar in the car, and the car stops, and the guy jumps out of the car, and he goes, is that a bulldog? And I said, yeah. He goes, can I pet him? I used to have one. I go, yeah, sure. He comes over and he's petting him, and I'm looking at him. I go, God, this guy. I said to him, are you Sam Raimi? And he goes, oh. He goes, no, I'm Ted Raimi. And they look.
Oh, it's Ted.
Ted. I go, and he looks at me and he goes, are you Kevin? He recognized me from Sin City. The only guy that ever recognized me from Sin City. And there's only like, you know, and I said, yeah, that's me. And through that, I kind of got to meet, eventually I got to meet Sam Raimi. And Sam Raimi owns that original cover. I gave that cover to him. That
oh, he does.
Because I thought that was a Sam Raimi shot.
Yeah.
And he put it in a movie. He put it in a movie. It's in The Quick and the Dead.
The art is in The Quick and the Dead?
In The Quick and the Dead, that not the art, but the actual shot, he did his version of it. The hole in the head.
Right. Yeah. No, I remember that. Yeah. I understand what you're saying.
He has that original, and he put it in the movie, and he got...
That's a fun movie.
I decide who lives or who dies.
Yeah, it's a great movie. And then I met Leonardo DiCaprio, which is kind of funny because of...
You've met a lot of people, Geof. You know that's not like necessarily normal, even like working in an entertainment industry. You've just happened to come across a lot of people.
Well, the funny thing with Leonardo DiCaprio was at San Diego, and it's so funny because even I didn't recognize this Gaston, who used to have this great comic store down in LA called Meltdown. It was a great store.
I love Meltdown.
It was fantastic. And he brought this young kid and who wanted to buy artwork. I'm looking at him, he looks kind of familiar to me. And it was DiCaprio. And the funny thing is, it was after the Titanic, nobody recognized him. He walked through that thing and nobody bothered him.
Wow.
Yeah. He came and he saw me, and then he went over and saw Moebius, and then as I understand it, he left.
I guess sometimes if you're not expecting to see
it is
somebody in that environment, it can be invisible.
It doesn't seem, yeah. But
well, you're about to go to New York Comic-Con. It's always a crazy experience. You'll probably get recognized a little bit there. I hope you have a good experience, though.
I'm too old now.
Too old. I hope you have a good time. And I'll be swinging by your booth to say hello. That would as long as the line isn't too crazy.
Oh, it's never me.
You know, let me just tell you one thing. Now I'm thinking, I've got a friend, Maddie, and every time you're at a convention that he's at, he goes to your booth and he says that, like, you know, you're just one of his favorite artists, but he always tells me, he's like, oh, Chris, Geof is just so kind to me. And like, you know, I'm not a, you know, a pro or anything, but he's just so kind. And thank you for being somebody that puts positivity into the world, Geof. Appreciate it.
I mean, I heard, I don't say who the artist was, but I did a big tour for a big guy and I talked to like big comic shop dealers. And I said, these having people in the stores, do they help, you know, do they help sell, do they like create, you know, a readership for a comic by doing this? So, well, sometimes, but I can tell you, it can hurt one. I said, really? So they talked about a guy, I won't say who it was. They used to sell like 150 copies of his comic. And he came, and he was such a jerk. After that, 5 copies.
Wow.
That bad. So I don't understand. I mean, you know,
I need people
to buy this stuff, and I appreciate that they come by, unless they're, you know, like really obnoxious people, like in that guy that came up started. You know,
it's not about anything.
Yeah, I remember a real quick one about Frank. It was a great comeback. He was in Paris, and we did a signing together in this comic store, and long line, and this guy comes up, and he's in front of Frank, and he says, "I don't like your stories." And Frank sits back and looks at me and goes, "You waited, you know, 40 minutes in line to tell me that?" And Frank looks at me and says, "You know what? I don't like your coat." And I just burst out laughing. I thought it was a the guy was just like, why? You know,
yeah.
But he handled him really well. There wasn't anything. But yikes. The French will tell you
for sharing some of these stories with us. It means a lot. It really does. And I hope that this silent but deadly edition of Shaolin Cowboy does well. And I'm excited to see more.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. I love your show. I mean, I learn a lot from it. And
that's very kind of you.
It's so professionally done. It's really, you know, I watch some various ones of things about movies and stuff. And
yeah. It's just me, but thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm trying my best. I'm trying
Appreciate
my best
you.
to entertain and educate.
I appreciate you giving me this forum.
Oh, it's
appreciate the
sincerely been
readers.
my pleasure. It really has. Thank you,
Everybody
Geof.
get out there and vote. I'm sure to vote.
There we go. Words of wisdom.